Hey folks, this is Sally Riggs here, psychologist, fellow long hauler, and your long COVID coach. As you are watching this video today, as it drops, it is the 4-year anniversary of my long COVID. So today is going to be a little bit of a different video. I just want to share some reflections, a little bit of what I'm feeling and what's going through my mind at this time. Many people I know share an anniversary around this time, especially those in the first wave. Many of us got sick in March 2020. Your anniversary might be today, it might be later this week or next week. Even if your anniversary is not for months, there are useful things here that we can reflect upon and kind of tips and strategies that will be relevant at different points in your journey. So do feel free to save this video, come back to it when it's relevant, etc. The first thing I want to talk a little bit about, so I did a video this time last year for my 3rd anniversary, and I'm going to link to it up here because it is very interesting to see my different thoughts and feelings from a year ago, and depending on what you're going through, some of what I talk about in that video might be super relevant and less of what I talk about in this one. So, you know, lots of useful things for you to get from both videos. In that video last year, I was experiencing a lot of sadness and other kind of intense emotions. So there's some great tips on that video for dealing with that. And you may also have seen that I did a video a few weeks ago about grief, which obviously is a huge part of the sadness that we experience and very relevant around our anniversaries, that we are very frequently reminded of all the things that we've lost and the different ways in which grief shows up for us. So you may also want to take a look at that video, and also I'm going to link that for you as well. Interestingly, how I'm feeling now is a little bit different. I am feeling much better. Lots of people have been asking me recently, how are you? Are you recovered? Currently putting myself at 97%, so edging up on that fully recovered. For those who have seen other videos that I did about some treatments I did last year that made me feel much worse, I definitely feel that I'm back to feeling good and very close to that full recovery space. I've been down in Texas for the last month doing lots of things, out every day, and also swimming, using the gym, going for walks with a little bit of a run in there. So really feeling like I'm building out that new life that I want to be living again, which is very exciting. And I share this with you not because I want you to feel badly, and I really just want to highlight that because I know from personal experience that when I was very sick, seeing recovery stories didn't actually inspire me. It made me very jealous and very angry. And if you are having that experience right now, thoughts like, how come she gets to recover and I don't get to? I just want to massively validate and normalize that experience, that is a completely understandable response. And the reason that I share where I am is because I do think it's important to acknowledge that recovery is possible and to show what that looks like and what it feels like, because many people in the space, when they do recover, disappear, and then we don't have that data of what it looks like to be recovered. And it's very easy to create ideas and stories in our mind. Being transparent and allowing people to see what it looks like for me, I think, is very important. And because that's where I am right now, definitely not so much grief and sadness as last year. Obviously, my life is still incredibly different now than it was 4 years ago. And there are things that I have lost that we have all lost with this pandemic. I am not running back at that level that I was. My life, my business, all of those things are very different. So of course there will be some of those feelings. I think it's also important when we do feel better to take a moment and acknowledge that and really allow ourselves to feel the good feelings associated with that. I have been doing a lot of work recently on expansion, and what I mean by that is when we get into rest and digest, there are things that we can do to help us stay there more and enjoy that more. This is something I've also spoken about in another video talking about aliveness, and so it is important to acknowledge where I am, how I'm feeling, and how exciting it is to build back, build forward, because we don't go back, this new life, and how exciting to have that opportunity. Something that is coming up for me though, you may also be able to relate to this. And this is a common experience I think we've all talked about a little bit in terms of the pandemic, that there have been lots of moments where we have gotten to a certain point and thought, oh, I didn't think this is what this would look like. And I am definitely having one of those moments in relation to my understanding of what's going on with COVID and long COVID and the science and the rest of the world's behavior and reaction. Obviously, throughout the pandemic, which by the way is ongoing, and I should probably rephrase that, throughout the lockdowns, there were differing responses to COVID. It became very politicized and polarized and weaponized. It does surprise me that there is so much of that still going on. And I've had some personal experiences recently that were a little bit shocking and a little bit disappointing, and that has kind of left me to reflect on what this means for all of us, which is a bit sad and brings up some of that feeling. When you are reading research papers on long COVID on a daily basis, it is impossible to ignore the science and the information around acute COVID. This is a level 3 pathogen, the damage that it is doing to people's bodies, to everybody, not just people who have long COVID. And we have a lot of very good research that is showing that. And yet, obviously, that isn't the dominant narrative that the world is taking. When I do sometimes share that information with people, the response I get is surprising. And most recently, this happened. As a psychologist, I'm on a lot of listservs talking about all kinds of things from, clinical stuff all the way to general discussions. Somebody had posted a question recently that they were seeing a lot more people having acute COVID in their practice. This is right now, 2024. Was that similar to what other people were seeing? I guess they were a little bit out of date with the current infection rates and were a bit surprised by this. Now, of course, it doesn't surprise me because I always keep an eye on the infection rates, and obviously we're not looking at testing data anymore because nobody is testing, so we're looking at wastewater data. Some of the communities that I'm in touch with are very frequently showing wastewater data updates week to week. So, at any given time I can tell you the states where I am and the US generally, what is happening in terms of infection rates. And interestingly, in February, although we had a peak over the holidays and it came down, it has also gone back up again in February, which probably there were some big super spreader events like the Super Bowl, and also very commonly now when people hear that it's gone down, then they go out and then it goes up again. But people on this listserv were responding, and there were some of the usual, oh, but COVID's very mild, and oh, I don't think we should worry. And it's hard for me to see those messages on a professional listserv where everybody is a scientist practitioner and should be able to read a scientific paper and understand how research works. It felt important that I should counter that and say, actually, I don't completely agree with you, and here's why. Here are some papers you might want to look at. And there were a couple of responses that were affirmative. A couple of people who also had long COVID who jumped in and said some things about that. And then there were more and more and more and more and more negative responses. The language was shaming and bullying, essentially trying to silence my message. I was accused of being an anti-vaxxer. I was accused of being anti-science. I was accused of inciting catastrophization, that was not a professional thing to do. As a psychologist, We're supposed to be making people feel better, and I should be bringing down anxiety, not increasing it. In particular, and this took every fiber of my being not to reply, somebody posted right at the end of a very long diatribe, basically, bullying me, that they had a number of young male patients who were now terrified that they were going to die of a heart attack, and how silly that was. And what I desperately wanted to reply, but I didn't, was, goodness, that is very silly. If you die of a heart attack, then you don't have to live with the absolute horror that is long COVID. Surely they should be worried about that rather than just not being here. But, people have their priorities wrong, and they're much more concerned about dying than living with a debilitating illness that stops you from living. But anyway, it isn't my place, apparently, to tell people about that. So, not surprisingly, this has brought up a lot of sadness, disappointment, anger. And you all have heard me talk about, for me, fight or flight is very much an anger experience. And I do a lot in my day on a regular basis to manage anger. And I definitely will be continuing to do that over the next few weeks as I process these experiences. You may be going through similar things, and so it felt important to share, because I think one of the things that we can all do is support each other and provide community and validation. If you are coming up against this with your friends, your family, your colleagues, you are not crazy. You are reading the science correctly. I do say quite frequently that in 10 to 15 years' time, when everybody is dealing with very serious health issues, they will change their tune. And out of anger, I do quite frequently say, and don't expect us to be there for you, because you were not there for us. Maybe I will have changed my tune by then, but maybe I won't. I think it is very disappointing that this is not where I expected us to be at 4 years. And this is not what I expected my recovery to look like, in the sense that I do mask 24/7, I do take COVID precautions continually, and other people do not. And so I live in a world where I am a minority, not because of my disability, but because of my COVID precautions. And that the way that that is approached is surprising. Something that also has been happening for me recently, being down here in Texas, I have been very, very supported. I don't know if it was surprising, but it's different. In New York, if I go to get a blood draw and I ask somebody to put a mask on, and this has happened to me multiple times, they will roll their eyes, they will say something sarcastic, and they will do it under duress. And I have had very aggressive blood draws as a result of asking people to mask. Here in Texas, people have been masking without me asking them to. I mentioned that I'm immune compromised in the context of something else, and people show up with a mask on. I didn't even ask them. Now, granted, mostly these are surgical masks, and we know that they're not great, but still, a surgical mask is better than coughing in my face. And that is not something I expected. I worked very long and very hard to get to New York and stay in New York, and it felt like my forever home for a very long time. And now I feel like a complete outsider, and I don't think I will be living there long term, which is a big adjustment. And especially when the propaganda, if that's the word, in America is that New York is a very liberal and science-based town, and places like Texas and Florida are hugely conservative and no one takes up the vaccine. And it seems that the opposite is true. In New York, people are very selfish, very self-centered, and determined to believe whatever makes sense to them, and everybody else be damned. And in Texas, people have been kind and warm and very, very interesting. Obviously, I don't intend to make this a political whatever, because that's not what it's about. But this has been a process for me. And if you are grappling with that, and if you are in your recovery process, building your new dream life and coming across similar issues, that maybe what was your community does not feel like home anymore, again to say, You are enormously validated. We are all going through similar processes. Whilst I don't think that's okay, again, we can find community with each other and support each other. This new world will look different for us, and that is okay. So as you watch this video today, we are coming up fast also on Friday is Long COVID Awareness Day. And there is going to be, I would imagine, an awful lot of material on social media trying to raise awareness about long COVID, which is excellent, because also one of my great disappointments is here we are 4 years in, and people who I talk to on a daily basis who are newer in their long COVID journey are still having the exact same experiences that we had 4 years ago. And that makes me very angry and also doesn't make any sense. If you have the spoons, whatever level, on Friday, to reshare some of this material or maybe share and comment on somebody else's post, please do so. What we do know from research is that trying to change people's strongly held beliefs by showing them evidence to the contrary does not work. And that was illustrated for me beautifully on that recent listserv. But what does work is knowing people who have a different experience. Somebody who has a family member or a close friend with a particular illness is going to know about that and is going to be inclined to advocate for it and think differently about their own health. And that's exactly the same with long COVID. So do not be afraid to repost things on your profile. If you do get backlash, ignore the nasty comments, delete the nasty comments, and please come to this community and we can all support each other. Certainly, I've noticed recently that I get a lot of comments, which drives me crazy. This is all about the vaccine, isn't it? It's all caused by the vaccine, isn't it? And I've started either deleting those comments or writing, no, it's not all about the vaccine, sorry. So if you do get that, again, just, feel free to ignore. A really good sentence, by the way, if people are trying to argue you down on social media is, you are welcome to believe that, and then just leave it. I wish I had written that on the listserv post the other day, then I wouldn't still be having the anger about the responses that I got. If friends do ask you about long COVID, it's not your job to tell them, obviously, but hopefully, and I'm already seeing some nice things that are being circulated, there will be lots of lovely clips that you can forward. There was somebody recently who was asking you, you can just forward something on to say, hey, I know you were asking about long COVID, take a look at this. It is sad that here we are at 4 years. The continuing abandonment of people who come into minority categories like disability and immune compromised is ongoing. We still have community together. We still can recover. We still can build beautiful lives. I know that's possible for you as much as it is for me, and let's continue to do that together. I hope you have a tolerable week, and I look forward to seeing you again on another video. Take care.